You know, we've all heard the word Big Pharma. Do you think there's such a thing as big archaeology?
No.
Oh, how odd.
I'm in Egypt at the Giza Plateau to learn about a lion monument that's in front of the three Great Pyramids, about 12 miles from the city of Cairo. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx was carved directly out of the limestone bedrock using a method known as subtractive stone carving, where the workers gradually removed material from the solid block of stone with a hammer and chisel to create a desired shape. The Great Sphinx in Egypt is compared to another archaeological site called Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. The T-shaped limestone pillars have 3D artwork that use the same carving technique. This sophisticated stonework indicates that large-scale construction existed much earlier than traditional frameworks. But I will tell you, if you don't know anything about Göbekli Tepe or the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, I'm going to strongly recommend an 8-episode TV show called Ancient Apocalypse by Graham Hancock. And this came out in 2022 on Netflix, and it supports Graham Hancock's book called Magicians of the Gods that came out in 2015. I do believe that Graham Hancock is right, that there was a lost advanced civilization of the Ice Age, and my research is to show the Egyptian side of that story. Now, an American geologist named Robert Schoch from Boston University published an article in 1992 called Seismic Investigations in the Vicinity of the Great Sphinx of Giza, Egypt. Now, he's from the United States of America. Robert Schoch announced the water sphinx erosion hypothesis. This dated the Great Sphinx monument to 10,000 BC, where he found that the water erosion marks on the Sphinx enclosure was caused by heavy rainfall and water runoff on the Sphinx enclosure walls. And the only time that you find that amount of rainfall, precipitation on the Giza Plateau is during the Younger Dryas period between 9,800 and 8,600 BC. And this makes sense. We know that the Nile River used to be luscious, a big rainforest, but the problem is now it's a barren desert. The modern view by Egyptologists is that the Great Sphinx of Giza was created around 2500 BC for the pharaoh Khafre, which is Khufu's son, when he built the second Great Pyramid. However, the inventory stela inscription, which is located at the Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Egypt, right in the Giza Plateau, it claims that the Pyramid of Queen Henetsun, also known as the Isis Temple, was constructed by Khufu next to the already existing House of Harmachis, which is the Sphinx. So what this means is that if the inventory stela states that the Temple of Isis was constructed by Khufu, which is just east of the Great Pyramid, beside the Great Sphinx, then the Great Sphinx was not built by Khufu's son Khafre, because he was not born yet. So according to this, the Great Sphinx was built before Khufu even ruled Egypt as a pharaoh. So the Sphinx is much older than Egyptologists claim that it is. And we do have a few people pushing back against the American geologist Robert Schoch. Two in particular, one's named Zahi Hawass and the other is Mark Lehner. These two Egyptologists do not believe in the research of geology that Robert Schoch is doing, which is odd.
But here's something that is actually physical. The erosion patterns on these rocks. Don't geologists say that this erosion was caused by water, which had to be at least 9,000, 10,000 years ago?
But this has been stated by only one geologist.
One person.
Yeah.
But he could be like the Galileo, who's trying to convince everyone.
Yeah, he tried, but I believe he is wrong.
You do. But he could be right.
No.
There's very little left of this ancient civilization other than things like the pyramids, other than things like the Sphinx. There's a geologist that really stuck his neck out. His name is Dr. Robert Schoch from Boston University. And what he said was his theory is that there's deep water erosion all over the temple of the Sphinx, where the Sphinx was carved out of, that is indicative of thousands of years of rainfall. And the last time they had rainfall in the Nile Valley was around 9,000 BC.
And now that we can date the Sphinx back to 10,000 BC, another secret that's come out is called the Hall of Records. Now, in 1931, a man named Edgar Cayce talked about an underground library that preserved the records of ancient Egyptian history, culture, and knowledge all into one centralized location. And in 1993, American geologist Robert Schoch found a large chamber under the left paw of the Sphinx using ground-penetrating radar.
Thomas DeBecke and I, when we did seismic work around the Sphinx, we found the chamber under the paws of the Sphinx. And it's, I'm sure, an artificial chamber. It's very regular. And this, I believe, could well be, I'm hypothesizing, and in science we make hypotheses that are testable. This is perfectly testable. All we have to do is enter that chamber, even if it's just to put a fiber optic down, and we can see, is it an artificial chamber that's an archive? Hopefully there's still things there, or maybe it was gutted and cleaned out at some point. But here we have the seismic work, one of the seismic maps, I'll call it, tomographic data, and what's labeled as anomaly A, under the left paw. That is the chamber we found under the left paw that the Egyptologists have wanted to deny ever since.
Lena was inspired by a fringe theory that refugees from the lost civilization of Atlantis settled in Egypt, built the pyramids, and hid their advanced knowledge in a secret chamber, the Hall of Records, beneath the Sphinx.
When you told me this story, you were honest about it. That's what I liked about you.
They removed a single stone from just to the left of the Sphinx's tail.
And sure enough, we saw this passage going down in and under the Sphinx.
They descended into the shaft.
Of course, we didn't know where it was going to go. And so 3 weeks I spent down in the darkness underneath the Great Sphinx.
We searched everywhere, but there is nothing hidden underneath.
The issue here is Zahi Hawass, Mark Lehner will say there is nothing beneath the Sphinx. There is no Hall of Records. These are all American hallucinations. People come here and try to find these things. Mark Lehner converted from being a proponent of Edgar Cayce, and it's like, there's nothing under the Sphinx. Robert Schoch and Thomas DeBecke did a side experiment known as seismic tomography. It's a non-invasive, they did the seismic refraction. This is tomography, where they basically check for cavities beneath the surface. And what they found was something that starts from right about here. Edgar Cayce would say that there is the Hall of Records, but the test shows that right from about here and 12 meters, it extends all the way out over here.
It's 12 meters long?
12 meters, and then 9 meters, this 12 meters long, 9 meters wide. So in this area here, they found a cavity. Not only did they find a cavity, but they were able to determine that the surface had straight angles. There are no straight right angles in nature. Yeah. It's missing it by like this much, or maybe this much, somewhere in here.
It seemed that way. You know how deep this hole is?
Yeah. So they tested the core samples for things underneath the Sphinx.
So they went down and they pulled out
here, when actually it needs to start in here.
They have cameras that you could, I'm sure they probably ran some cameras down.
That wasn't on purpose, I'm sure.
And they don't want to explore it, and we haven't gotten permission to explore it.
Why don't they want to explore?
I
mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I know, but this is...
If there's physical evidence...
This is politics in Egypt.
God, it's so squirrely.
Yeah. So now, okay, this is 1991 or so, early 1990s. As of last year, 2017, we have textual evidence, ancient hieroglyphs talking about this chamber, talking about the Sphinx, talking about the Sphinx being a lioness guarding a chamber.
So in the sacred place of Zeb Tepi, the first time. Zeb Tepi is when Egyptians believed everything began, the creation of the world, the beginning of time. So what this text is telling us is that this is the place of creation, this is the place of the first time. And so it is no surprise that here is maybe where we have a cavern where the original words of creation are stored. And that is the archive that I've been researching, the archive under the Sphinx. And I believe that when we drill, if we ever get a permission to drill in that place, we may be able to find something, some evidence that this indeed is a real place. It's not a mythical place. It's a real place where the ancient Egyptians believe creation occurred, original creation. And of course, we are next to the statue that we believe is a much more ancient statue than the Old Kingdom. We believe that this originally was a lioness statue called Mehit, and that statue was here for as long as memories go. And that's why that statue was considered sacred. This was a sacred place because the statue was guarding this place. And so whoever came here first believed that this statue is really the place of creation.
Question.
Yes.
So you need special permission actually to get in this barrier to the front to look and check out the Sphinx up close.
Yeah, but yes, we can ask
And
for
it's gated off.
So we have to turn and get from the other side.
Oh, no, I'm good on that. I didn't know if we could go in, actually go in.
No, it's
forbidden?
You have
Okay.
some permission from the ministry.
Okay, I understand. I just needed people to see it because they don't ever show this, that you can't get in there anymore. It's changed.
So when we got back to the car, I asked my Egyptologist guide, why aren't they allowing people to get close to the Sphinx? And he said that you need some sort of special permission from the Egypt ministry. And this changed around 2021 at the time of COVID. However, we know there's a different story. The Sphinx Rump Passage was excavated in the 1980s by Mark Lehner and Zahi Hawass, and we had two people in 2021 go inside and find out that there's fresh wood covering a passage that's been cemented off. So something is definitely weird, as though they've already excavated the Hall of Records and potentially taken everything out. They had it blocked off in 1980 for 3 weeks, and they were probably taking stuff out of the Sphinx at that time. Unfortunate part is they're claiming that nothing was found. Of course, this event is eerily similar to another event that happened in the past, when the Great Library of Alexandria in Alexandria, Egypt, was burned by Julius Caesar during the Civil War in 48 BC. It is believed that the ancient technology blueprints were destroyed and burned. The reason that the Hall of Records is important is if the records exist detailing these myths alongside historical accounts, it could provide insights into how these stories evolved over time. It may reveal connections between mythology and actual historical events or figures, suggesting that some aspects of the creation stories are based on real occurrences or observations. The existence of such records would highlight an organized effort to preserve the Egyptian history, culture, and knowledge into a centralized location. It would suggest that they had a structured approach to documenting not only religious beliefs, but also scientific understanding, potentially including astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and engineering, which are all integral components to Zep Tepi, the first time.